The leaders of Iran and the United States have both signed a memorandum of understanding that, for now at least, ends their 4-month-long war. Donald Trump signed the document in Versailles, where he was dining at the invitation of French President Emmanuel Macron. Trump is facing some criticism back in the U.S. for this deal, a Republican senator calling it the worst foreign policy blunder in decades. In a post on Truth Social, Trump called his critics fools.
This was not easy, I can tell you.
But finally, in the Palace of Versailles, Donald Trump put his signature on the framework peace deal with Iran.
Yes?
Yep. Bravo.
Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian signed it afterwards, with Trump's signature visible on the document. Earlier, at the G7 summit in Evian, Trump defended the deal, first on how its terms would be enforced.
If they don't honor the agreement, or some things aren't even mentioned in the agreement, it's a memorandum of understanding, but we have an understanding of certain things without writing it. And if they don't honor that, we'll probably go back to bombing them until they honor it, you know? It's amazing what bombs can do.
On the future of sanctions on Iran.
As far as sanctions are concerned, at some point, you know, we have sanctions which will never let them rebuild. They would have no money. They would be in poverty. The 91 million people would starve. So something will happen as soon as they behave. When they behave, we're going to let that go. We're going to have to.
On frozen Iranian assets.
We have taken a lot of their money, and we have their money. We have taken their money. It's not our money. It's their money, and we froze it. At a certain point in time, I guess we're going to have to give it back.
On the Israel-Hezbollah conflict.
The Lebanon piece is something we'll have to work on a little bit. It's a very small piece of the puzzle, actually, but it still makes a lot of noise. The big deal is the Iran deal. That's where the money is, where the power was. But they have Hezbollah, and we got to get that done one way or the other. We'll do it.
And on the memorandum itself.
This is a memorandum of understanding. It's very important, but it might not be the kind of a document that I should be signing.
All right, joining me now is Scott Lucas, professor at the Clinton Institute at the University College in Dublin. Professor Lucas has spent decades analyzing U.S. foreign policy, especially in the wider Middle East. Professor Lucas, it's good to have you with us. I just want to ask you, what's your reaction to U.S. President Trump there saying that this memorandum of understanding is possibly a document that he shouldn't be signing?
I think it's always best to put aside Donald Trump's rhetoric. I think personally, he said this, he wants to be in a position where he can take credit if this all goes well. But if this doesn't go well, he wants to be able to blame Vice President J.D. Vance. His words, not mine. I think it's more productive, however, to actually assess what is in the memorandum, which is not yet a deal. We have to emphasize that, because if we go through there point by point, this actually reads like an Iranian wish list. Donald Trump has effectively signed off on many of not just Iranian conditions, but Iranian hopes for what they could get out of a war in which the regime has not only survived, but because of its leverage on the Strait of Hormuz, is in a far better position politically than it was before the war started.
So what you're saying here, Professor, is that in the eyes of the Americans, we should be talking about a capitulation, a loss in this war, and the Iranians can talk about a win.
Yeah, the Trump folks are not going to call it a capitulation. And even Donald Trump, as he was conceding on all those points, talked about how we're doing great winning. And J.D. Vance is doing damage control today with interview after interview to try to proclaim that, in fact, a weakened Iran is actually playing on the U.S. terms. But let me just check off a few things, and then you decide win or loss. One, the Strait of Hormuz was open before the war. Now, under this memorandum of understanding and the negotiations, Iran, along with Oman, could be controlling the strait and charging fees to pass it. Secondly, there's a ceasefire across the region. That is a ceasefire that is not only applied to Iran, but it should apply to Israel's attacks on Lebanon. So both the U.S. and Israel have been effectively handcuffed from military action. Thirdly, in return for reopening the strait, Iran immediately gets a lifting of sanctions on its oil exports, something it has not had for many years. It gets a lifting of the U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports. And as negotiations progress, it could get unfreezing of billions of dollars. The total we hear is around $24 billion in Iranian assets, and it could get $300 billion in an investment and reconstruction fund. And if you finally add to that the Iranians have put the nuclear program towards the back of the talks, not at the front, and that they have been able to get acceptance that uranium will stay within Iran. Oh, and let's not forget another thing that Donald Trump is now accepting, contrary to the administration's position up until a few days ago, that Iran can have ballistic missiles.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot on the table there that appears to be going in the direction of Iran. I'm wondering, will one of the consequences of this war and this deal impact U.S.-Israeli relations? We know that Israel has said that it's not pulling out of southern Lebanon. That's what Iran wants to see happen. Today, the U.S. vice president issued a warning to Israel that that they should not do anything to alienate themselves from their most important ally. I mean, those are strong words coming from a U.S. administration.
Yeah, and let's remember that Israel encouraged the U.S. to go into war, effectively setting aside the talks with Iran just over 3 months ago. Now you have Donald Trump openly, with foul language, berating Benjamin Netanyahu, both on the phone and in public statements. I think the reality of this, however, is going to be a bit of maneuvering in that Israel's going to try to consolidate what is in effect an occupation of southern Lebanon, probably up to 10 kilometers deep inside the country. And I think if that does not jeopardize the deal with Iran, if Iran does not push back on that, I think the Trump administration will accept that. The problem here is if the Israelis go farther, as some ministers in the Netanyahu government want, and to continue to try to strike on Beirut, if they carry out those strikes on Beirut, as they have done twice in the last week and a half, then they'll face not only Iranian retaliation, but I think they will face a very public split with the Trump administration, which will favor Iran in the deal over Israel hitting the Lebanese capital.
Okay. Professor Scott Lucas, unfortunately, we're out of time, but we appreciate your time and your insights in a story that will continue to develop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get some analysis now from Fawaz Gerges. He's professor of Middle Eastern politics and international relations at the London School of Economics. Good to have you back with us. Professor, we have a memorandum of understanding now between Iran and the U.S. They've agreed to suspend hostilities for 60 days while trying to negotiate a final peace deal. Before I ask you about the specifics of that MOU, give us your general assessment of this preliminary deal. How significant is it?
Well, it's very significant because it promises to end hostilities permanently. It promises to end the war between not only the United States and Iran, but also in Lebanon as well. And that was a major key demand by Iran. So Iran really succeeded in linking the war between the United States and Iran to Israel's war in Lebanon. I think overall, the big picture, Iran emerges as the real winner. Iran gets major economic benefits. It gets waivers to sell oil and gas. It gets the United States promised to lift banking restrictions on Iran in order for Iran to facilitate Iran's ability to sell its oil and gas, while kicking Iran's nuclear program down the road.
Right.
And also the United States promises to help establish a $300 billion reconstruction fund once a final deal is reached between the United States and Iran.
Okay, so we're into the details already. There seems to be a lot of carrots in this arrangement for Iran. As you mentioned, billions in frozen assets released, sanctions lifted, resumption of oil sales. What does the U.S. get that it didn't already have before it started the war?
Well, if I really, for our viewers, the strategic aim of President Trump was opening the Strait of Hormuz for traffic. That was it. That's it. That was the priority of President Trump.
Which was
That
there
is really
before the war.
Return to the pre-war. That's really, and that's why there are many questions. Many Americans of both parties, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, they're asking questions. This was a futile war, an unnecessary war, that the same agreement could have been reached in Geneva 2 days before the United States and Israel launched the war against Iran. There are many questions that are being asked, even by Republicans. In fact, some of the top Republicans, Senator Republicans, called this memorandum of agreement between the United States and Iran, a great foreign policy blunder, one of the greatest foreign policy blunders in decades. So this tells you a great deal that the war itself, President Trump did not really think, did not really have an exit strategy, did not think about the morning after. I think he bought into his Israeli counterpart, Benjamin Netanyahu, that was going to be an easy war, quick war, not a costly war. And the template was really Venezuela. President Trump really convinced himself that basically he could do a similar quick victory in Iran as he did in Venezuela a few weeks earlier.
You've already mentioned Israel. Israel, of course, is locked in a conflict with the Iran-backed militia Hezbollah in Lebanon. Ending hostilities in Lebanon is also part of the agreement that the U.S. has done with Iran. Lebanon is mentioned 3 times in the first article of this Memorandum of Understanding. How realistic is a ceasefire there, given the positions of Israel and Hezbollah?
There is no ceasefire. Hezbollah has already accepted the ceasefire. Hezbollah has celebrated the ceasefire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his defense minister rejected the agreement. In fact, since the ceasefire was signed in the past few days, or announced, more than 20 Lebanese and 100 have been injured. Israeli ground offensive continues, even though less escalation as before. So the question is, your question about, this is a very, very key demand for Iran, given the organic links between Iran and Hezbollah. And the continuation of Israeli hostilities in Lebanon could really implode the American-Iranian negotiations in the future. And that's why the key question that we have to wait and see. Does President Trump have the desire and the will to pressure Benjamin Netanyahu to stop his ground offensive and military activities in southern Lebanon? We have to wait and see, because I doubt it very much whether President Trump will be able to pressure Netanyahu. Because remember, for our own viewers, Benjamin Netanyahu is facing the fight of his life. His political future is on line. His legacy is on line. You have elections in Israel coming up in the next few months. So the war in Lebanon, if he were to accept ceasefire in Lebanon, that really would mean the end of his political career inside Israel itself.
How confident are you, Professor, that the warring parties will conclude a viable peace agreement during the 60 days they've allowed themselves?
No one can really basically predict what will happen. No one, not even President Trump, not even the Iranian side. But here is my take, the big picture. I think neither side, nor the United States, nor Iran, will return to full hostilities. Both sides have a vested interest in basically bridging their differences. My take is that they will not be able to really bridge their differences in 60 days. It will take several months or probably a year. And I expect that the ceasefire, the 60 days, will be renewed after the expiration of 60 days, because neither President Trump nor the Iranian leadership really want to start another round of hostilities. So all in all, I think what we are seeing now is de-escalation. We will see serious negotiations, and one would hope, right? We hope that both sides will basically meet each other halfway, as we have seen in the past few weeks, because the framework of understanding is really a major achievement. We should not really underestimate its importance, given, what has transpired between the United States and Iran in the past year.
Professor, thank you very much for talking with us today. That was Fawaz Gerges, Professor of Middle Eastern Politics and International Relations at London School of Economics.
Thank you.